Priscilla's fingers tremble as she lifts the fragile envelope from beneath Lisa Marie's crayons and scribbled hearts. The handwriting is unmistakable, curled, confident, and intimate, dated June 1967. Her breath catches. This letter isn't addressed to her. It predates their honeymoon, whispers secrets from a time she thought she understood. She slides onto the edge of the couch in Graceland's dim library, the Christmas lights outside casting long shadows across the floor. With each measured word, the past shifts beneath her. A promise once made in love now echoes with unintended meaning. Memories she buried, late-night studio sessions, hushed phone calls, unspoken fears, come rushing back. Why was this hidden? Who was meant to read these lines? And why has it taken 8 years to find them here, among a child's coloring books? As Priscilla unfolds the paper, the quiet house seems to hold its breath alongside her. In that moment, she realizes the truth awaiting her in those carefully folded pages will redefine everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and the man she married. Priscilla eased the heavy lid of the cardboard box, its edges worn from years of handling. The scent of old paper and crayon dust rose to greet her as she brushed aside folded drawings and faded birthday cards. A cluster of Lisa Marie's preschool paintings revealed swirls of hot pink hearts and impossibly green trees. Beneath them lay the fragile envelope, yellowed at the corners, sealed in ink that time had begun to blur. She recognized Elvis's loopy script at once. For Captain Harold Stevens, it read. Her heart thumped hard, as though a hidden chamber within her chest had sprung open. She lifted the single sheet of stationery, bearing the Graceland letterhead, and unfolded it with trembling fingers. January 14th, 1967. My dear Harold, when I think back to those nights in Munich, how we used to share a bottle of whiskey after guard duty, I remember your steady calm, your laughter rising above the bombs. Your son, little David, is of that same unbreakable spirit. I owe you more than words can say for your kindness to a homesick kid from Tupelo. Priscilla turned the page, absorbing Elvis's earnest tone. I will send a check each month for as long as David needs it, until he graduates high school and perhaps beyond, so that his mother need never fear for his future. Please consider this my small way to repay your friendship and sacrifice. Tears pricked her eyes. She traced the oily swirl of Elvis's signature, his name flowing with the same grace that once commanded stadiums. The letter finished with a postscript. Keep laughing, Harold. You taught me that even in darkness, a man can choose to shine. Her breath caught. This letter, never meant for her to see, revealed a part of her husband she had scarcely known. A private devotion to a fallen comrade's child, a promise kept in silence for years. Somewhere behind her, Lisa Marie's giggle drifted through the halls of Graceland. Priscilla folded the letter carefully, smoothing the crease so as not to tear the tender parchment. She leaned back against the trunk of the box, mind racing through memories of Elvis in his uniform, how he'd whispered late at night of chests tightening with grief at the loss of a friend, yet never once revealing the truth behind those conversations. Under the chandelier's soft glow, Priscilla closed her eyes. She could almost hear the echo of Elvis's laughter. Bold, confident, comforting. Yet in that laughter lay a hidden grief, deferred and transformed into monthly payments to a boy he had never publicly acknowledged. The house felt impossibly silent after that. Even the distant hum of the recording studio next door seemed to hush, as if the walls themselves held their breath. Priscilla slid the letter into her robe pocket and stood, determination stirring in her chest. She would find Harold's son, David Stevens, and she would make sure that the promise Elvis had kept behind closed doors became a memory honored in the light. As the last candle flickered on the mantel, Priscilla pressed her hand to the cool wood, vowing quietly, "No more silence." And in that moment, Graceland's festive trimmings melted away, leaving only the faint imprint of a promise penned in secrecy, waiting now to reshape the bond she once took for granted. When Priscilla reached the dusty outskirts of the Kansas town, its single blinking stoplight and low-slung storefronts a far cry from Graceland's manicured lawns, she felt the weight of that unspoken letter heavy in her pocket. She navigated the narrow streets to a modest brick church on Elm Avenue, where the steeple's faded paint and rusting bells spoke of years of community gatherings and silent prayers. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of hymnals and old oak pews. A dozen teenagers sat scattered through the sanctuary, clutching choir books, their rehearsed voices rising and falling under the direction of a stooped music minister. Priscilla took a seat at the back, careful to remain unseen, as the final note drifted into silence. The minister, a kindly man named Reverend Watkins, closed the hymnal with deliberation. "David, your solo on Amazing Grace is next," he announced, scanning the group. A tall, lanky boy rose from the fifth row, his fingers brushing the guitar strap at his back. His dark hair fell into his eyes as he approached the pulpit. Priscilla's breath caught. David Stevens, son of the man Elvis had lost years ago, stood before her. At 17, his face still bore the softness of adolescence, but his eyes held an unexpected steeliness. He nodded at the minister, adjusted the microphone, and began. "When peace like a river attendeth my way." His voice was raw but earnest, each word resonating through the wooden rafters. Somewhere between the thirds and the verses, the boy paused, his throat working around the tremor that threatened to betray the depth of his feelings. Then he pressed on, and by the time he sang, "Lord, wash over me," the congregation was silent, transfixed by a sound echoing from a life almost forgotten. As the final chord faded, Priscilla felt tears pool at the corners of her eyes. This was the boy whom Elvis had supported in strict secrecy, David, whose mother had once wept in her husband's absence, and whose future the king of rock and roll had underwritten with his own earnings. After the rehearsal, Priscilla introduced herself to Reverend Watkins, who recognized her name with a polite grin. "You're Mrs. Presley," he said, lifting a gentle eyebrow. "David's been telling us about your family. He's grateful." They stepped out into the warm afternoon, and Priscilla watched as David nearly melted into the brick facade behind him, uncertainty flickering across his features. He adjusted the guitar case at his feet, then looked back at her. Thanks for coming," he stammered. The words caught in his throat. "Mr. Presley, he's always helped me, ma'am. I didn't know him, but I felt it. This school, the lessons, the guitar lessons, it was all him." Priscilla's heart ached at his humility. She retrieved the letter from her pocket, smoothing the creases that had formed at the edges. "I know," she said gently, revealing the paper. "Your father was more than a friend to him. This letter, my husband wrote it for you, David. He wanted you to have it." David's hand hovered over the envelope, uncertainty wrinkling his brow. "It's ABCDF. No, I don't know what to say." Priscilla smiled, recalling Elvis's own awkwardness in such moments. "You don't have to say anything," she assured him. "He believed in you. I just wanted you to know." He unfolded the letter with reverence, his gaze shifting between the page and the face of the woman who had brought it. Afternoon light danced across the ink, and Priscilla watched him read Elvis's words of friendship, sacrifice, and unwavering support. As the last syllables of the postscript, "Keep laughing, Harold," settled between them. David's shoulders slumped with relief. A small, grateful smile curved his lips. "I had no idea," he whispered, voice thick. "He never told me." Priscilla reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "Some promises are meant to be kept quietly," she said, "but now you know, and you can carry that forward." They walked in companionable silence back to the little brick church, where the late afternoon sun cast honeyed rays through stained glass windows. Each beam seemed to illuminate not only David's path forward, but Priscilla's new understanding of the depths of a man she thought she knew completely. In that humble sanctuary, father and son were reunited, one in memory, the other in spirit, bound by a promise written in ink and sealed by love. Priscilla stood between past and present, aware that the ripples of a single act of generosity had reached farther than anyone could have imagined, and that the boy before her would one day reshape the world with the same humbleness that had shaped him. The next dawn found Elvis slipping out of Graceland before sunrise, his driver instructed to take an unhurried route across the outskirts of Memphis. Wordlessly, Elvis settled into the back seat of the Cadillac, his mind turned toward a modest neighborhood he had secretly marked on a crumpled scrap of paper. He'd resolved to meet Jimmy Stevens again, not as a star, but as the man who cared enough to listen. Arriving at a two-bedroom bungalow with peeling white paint and a front yard overgrown with weeds, Elvis stepped onto the sagging porch. Through the screen door he could hear the faint clink of dishes and the soft hum of a radio playing distant church gospel. With a gentle knock, he announced himself. "Mr. Stevens, may I come in?" Inside, Jimmy's mother, Mrs. Stevens, raised her eyes from the table where a simple supper of cornbread and stew had been laid out. Her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief as Elvis entered, dressed in jeans and a plain denim jacket, hair slightly mussed. Next to her, Jimmy stood, mouth agape, hand hovering over the half-empty bowl before him. "Elvis," Jimmy whispered, as though speaking too loudly might break the spell. Elvis smiled, the fatigue from touring still in his gaze, but softened by warmth. "Hey there, Jimmy. Mind if I join you?" Nervously, Jimmy pulled out a chair. Elvis sat and scooped a spoonful of stew, nodding appreciatively. Mrs. Stevens looked on, tears forming as she recognized the man whose voice had filled radio waves across the nation. "I heard you found my wallet," Elvis began, his tone easy, "and that you wanted me to hear a song for your mom." He unfolded a folded sheet of paper and passed it to Jimmy's mother, a check for $50, enough to help pay next month's rent. "Use it however you need." Mrs. Stevens clutched the paper, remorse and gratitude mingling in her eyes. Jimmy leaned forward, curiosity winning out over shyness. You really did that for me?" Elvis set his bowl aside. "I meant every word. But more than that, I heard you love music." From behind his seat, Elvis retrieved a battered guitar case. "This belonged to my cousin. Think you could give it a home?" Jimmy's fingers trembled as he opened the case to reveal a well-worn acoustic guitar, the wood warm with age. He lifted it gingerly, as though it weighed more than the world. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Elvis replied softly. "Just promise me you'll play it often." He rested a hand on Jimmy's shoulder. "Music can carry you through hard times. It carried me, and it can carry you too." A hush settled over the small kitchen, broken only by the radio's quiet hymn. Jimmy strummed an awkward chord, a bright sound in the dim room. Elvis closed his eyes, absorbing the moment as deeply as any audience roar. But here, there was no stage, only a boy's first hesitant song. When it was time to leave, Elvis stood and offered a gentle bow of his head. "Keep that guitar close," he said. and never lose sight of who you are. Outside, the morning sun glinted on the Cadillac's chrome. Jimmy and his mother watched as the car pulled away, a swirl of dust marking its path. In the quiet that followed, Jimmy cradled the guitar, his heart full of a promise that seemed almost too wonderful, that one man's kindness could rewrite an entire life. Mrs. Stevens placed a hand on her son's shoulder. "He sees something special in you, Jimmy. You mustn't let him or yourself down." Jimmy nodded, determination and hope radiating in his posture. With the guitar in hand and his mother's love surrounding him, he felt ready to face whatever came next. And somewhere behind the wheel of that Cadillac, Elvis Presley carried with him the knowledge that the simplest gift, a moment of genuine connection, could echo far beyond any stage. 2 weeks later, Memphis buzzed with anticipation for Elvis Presley's benefit concert at the Mid-South Coliseum. Word had spread quietly among local papers that a special guest would appear. Jimmy Stevens, the barefoot boy who had returned a famous wallet and who now had a chance to step onto Elvis's stage. The seats filled fast that evening, a mix of veterans, families, and longtime fans eager for the King's return to his hometown roots. Backstage, Jimmy stood at the edge of the green room, guitar case in hand, heart pounding beneath his thin shirt. A volunteer dressed him in a clean school uniform. First time he'd ever performed in anything besides jeans. His mother hovered nearby, clutching his hand, eyes shining with pride and nerves. At precisely 8:03 p.m., the house lights dimmed and a hush settled. From beneath the curtain, Jimmy could see the floodlights sweep the audience. Rows of faces turned expectant, many holding signs reading, "Play on, Jimmy," and "Elvis's Little Hero." Then the unmistakable chords of "That's All Right" rose from the stage. Elvis, clad in a simple white shirt and black slacks, bounded into view, his voice rich and resonant. He owned the arena with every syllable. Yet tonight there was a tenderness in his delivery, a nod to the small acts of kindness that had set this night in motion. As the song drew to a close, Elvis stepped to the microphone. "Thank you, Memphis," he said, voice echoing softly against the rafters. "But tonight, I've got someone special who deserves a moment in the spotlight." He beckoned, and Jimmy's mother squeezed his hand. With legs trembling, Jimmy emerged from behind the curtain and made his way across the stage, escorted by 2 stagehands in fine suits. The ovation erupted before Jimmy even reached the center, a thunderous roar that lifted him off his feet. He paused, guitar slung low, and looked out at the sea of faces. Some cheering, some wiping tears. With a deep breath, he placed his fingers on the fretboard, finding the first chord of the song he'd been perfecting in secret. A gentle rendition of "Love Me Tender," transformed by his own simple harmonies. The first note floated across the crowd like a candle flame in the dark. Jimmy closed his eyes, remembering Elvis's guidance. "Feel it in your bones, son. Let your heart lead your hands," he sang, voice soft but clear, each word heartfelt. "Love me tender, love me sweet, never let me go." Midway through the second verse, Elvis joined in from his own microphone, his golden timbre weaving around Jimmy's younger, plaintive tone. The 2 voices blended, king and novice, mentor and pupil, bridging a gap of fame and obscurity. The audience rose as one, swept up in an intimate duet forged by compassion. By the third chorus, tears glistened on faces throughout the Coliseum. Veterans who remembered battles, mothers who had struggled, children who had lost hope. Here was proof that empathy could ripple outward, comforting even the most hardened souls. When the final note faded, an electric silence held the hall for a heartbeat. Then the thunderous applause returned, stronger than before. Jimmy opened his eyes to see Elvis smiling at him, eyes brimming with pride. Elvis crouched, placing one hand on Jimmy's shoulder, and said in a voice just loud enough for the boy, "You did good, kid. Real good." After the show, in the calm of the emptying venue, Jimmy and his mother slipped backstage. They found Elvis removing his rhinestone-studded jumpsuit in the dressing room. He greeted them with a warm nod and led them through the labyrinth of corridors to a small lounge where a modest sign read, "Private." There, laid out on a table, sat a polished silver tray bearing 2 glasses of iced tea and a wrapped parcel. Jimmy's mother gasped softly as Elvis handed her an envelope. Inside was an official letter from the Presley Foundation announcing Jimmy's full scholarship to the Memphis School of Music, along with a brand-new acoustic guitar tailored to his size and signed, "Dream on, Jimmy." E.P. Jimmy looked up in disbelief. "But I can't accept this." His voice quavered. Elvis knelt to meet his gaze. "Yes, you can. You've earned it 10 times over. More than any one of those gold records on my wall." He placed a hand gently on Jimmy's shoulder. "Consider it my way of saying thank you for reminding me that the biggest stages in life are built not on lights or crowds, but on small acts of courage." They left the Coliseum together under the glow of the marquee lights. Outside, Memphis's night air carried the distant hum of traffic and the echoed cheers from within. Jimmy cradled his new guitar case, its weight a promise of possibilities ahead. His mother wrapped an arm around him, her earlier struggles momentarily forgotten in the warmth of this miracle. Elvis lingered on the sidewalk, watching them depart into the night. He lifted his head skyward, drawing in a deep breath. In that moment, he felt both the vastness of his own journey and the intimate power of a single life changed by compassion. As he turned back toward the empty hall, his silhouette cut a solitary figure beneath the marquee. Elvis Presley, "If I Can Dream." And beneath that, he carried in his heart the knowledge that sometimes the richest souls truly do come in the smallest shoes.